Hi everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of this Careers Week, brought to you by the Young Professional Committee and the Institute. With the level of disruption in people's personal and professional lives over the last 2 years, we felt it was the perfect time to reflect on your career and your professional future. We're delighted to bring your attention to all that the Institute has to offer to support you to get the most out of your career, and also to bring you face-to-face with people who can help you should you want to change in your career, such as Rachel Tubridy of PeopleSource, who we're absolutely delighted will be the young professional sponsor for this year and on. I know Rachel has been out the door with client requests and looks forward to kind of sharing her insights with you today. So without any further, I'll pass to you, to Rachel for a few words.
Thanks, Paul. Well, my name is Rachel Tubridy, for those of you who don't know me, but however, this is my 3rd year sponsoring the young professionals, so you're probably sick of the sight of me at this stage, but I'm only too delighted to participate in these events. But this is the first year I think we've done a Careers Week, and I think it's an amazing thing to do, particularly as we start into 2022, which has already seen more movement and I suppose change than the previous years. It's a really, really buoyant year, and that's for both internal promotions and external moves. So as I say, we've already seen loads of movement. This week of events will hopefully give you loads of, I suppose, information on how to approach your, whether it's an internal progression, external move, and there's particularly a lot in today's session as well. At the end, there's going to be a panel session, so questions and answers. So don't be afraid to pop your questions and answers in the Q&A box, and then we'll all be more than happy to answer them at the end. And what I'll do is I'll just put my details in the chat box, I believe, and if anybody wants to take their questions offline or has any questions about their career or the jobs market, don't hesitate to give me a call. But you probably know me, as I say, already at this stage. So I am going to hand you over to Karen Lanigan, Head of Membership Experience. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. As Rachel said, I'm Head of Member Experience here with Chartered Accountants Ireland, and that also includes our Careers and Recruitment team as well. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Dave, who works as part of that team. He's also a member, so has obviously the kind of, I suppose, personal experience of qualifying and working in that space and going through career change himself, but also obviously many years, like myself, of supporting members at every stage of their career. As Rachel and Paul said, this is part of a series of, I suppose, webinars and also supports that we are showcasing to members this week as part of the Careers Week. And essentially what we want to do is to show you that we as your institute have a whole range of career supports that are there for you. It's simply a case of reaching out to us, and we're happy to go through those with you, but also as well to provide you with one-to-one support. So in terms of what we're going to focus on today, so basically what we want to do is make this session as practical as possible. So we're going to focus in on tips, advice, and tools that you can basically use to move your career to the next stage. We're going to start that by helping you to get clarity in relation to your own kind of personal motivators, your values, your ambitions, so that you're ultimately working towards a career that is motivational and is basically what you're looking for. And then also, like, how do you plan that career? How do you map out your career? Because that's one of the most frequent questions that Dave and I would get is, well, look, how do I put together a career plan? How do I map that out? We're also going to then touch on getting the most from your current role. As Rachel said, it's a busy year, both in terms of, new opportunities and the great resignation that everybody is talking about, but also too in terms of promotion and, looking for opportunities within your current role. So it's looking at how you can do that. And it's also then looking at how you can build your network, developing those career allies in the shape of whether that's mentors, whether it's, I suppose through your own network of contacts, and how you really use that personal network to move your career forward. And then again, one of the areas that we touch on like on a daily basis within the career service, and I'm sure Rachel does too, which is around the whole area of CV and interview preparation. And now particularly in the virtual world, I know we're going back to face-to-face to some extent, but I do think that, virtual interviews are here to stay. So it's how you make that impact in that space. And also then, as I said, the resources and supports that are available through the Institute. So firstly, I'm just going to ask Emma to put up a poll for me if you can. And basically the question I'm posing to you today, just to get us started, is, have you drafted a career plan? The results are typically in the same region. So we'll just wait and see what comes up here. Okay, so we're seeing that 73% haven't drafted a career plan. So we have lots of advice for you today to help you on that journey. And we can see that 27% have. So even for those who have, I'm sure there's going to be some tips and advice in here today that we will share with you. Actually, the last time I ran this poll, you'll be interested to hear that 90% didn't have a career plan drafted. So as a cohort, you're well ahead of others. So well done to those who have already drafted a career plan. And for those of you who haven't, don't worry. You're going to be able to kind of use the tips and advice and structures that we give you today to help you to do that. And it's never too late to draft a career plan. So I just want to start out with this initial quote, which is by George Harrison, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. And it's basically, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And that is, I suppose, true in terms of your career as well, because you need to think of your career as a journey, and a journey that you need to map out and to take the time to kind of plot that out, and each step along the way as you go through your career. And really what we're trying to do today is just to get that, to I suppose, to deliver that message, to say, look, your career is a journey. It is something that you need to take control of, you need to manage. And the more time you invest in that management process, the more I suppose success you're likely to see in your career as you go through that journey. So it is all about just taking that time to think about where it is you want to go, map that journey out, and that's what we're going to help you with here, and help you to take control of that journey, and to live, like, really just to maximize your potential, your fulfillment, and that you are very much in control of your career, as opposed to, maybe being directed a certain way, whether that's I suppose kind of in the sector that you're in or whatever that might be, but that you don't find in 5 or 10 years time that you've suddenly found yourself down a particular path and kind of go, this really wasn't where I wanted to go. So it's to try and avoid that. And we all have kind of career blips along the way. And I suppose the better you plan, the better able you are to deal with any hiccups or hitches that come along the way. So that's essentially what we want to focus in on today. So there are 4 key steps in terms of setting yourself up for career success. So the first that we're going to touch on is kind of that piece about knowing yourself and what it is you really want from your career, and to take that time to kind of reflect on, values, your motivators, your strengths, and really being honest with yourself and taking ownership, as we said, of that career journey. The next part then is exploring your options. So that would be, looking at researching the market, speaking to as many people as you possibly can, getting a mentor, and then, looking at specific goals for yourself. Moving on then, it's at that decision phase, and that's where your career plan really starts to come into its own, that you're mapping out where it is you want to go. And then the next stage then is moving forward, which is where you basically put those plans into action, that you're leveraging your personal network, you're working with your brand, and you're basically moving your career forward. So if you stick to these 4 steps, it will give you a structure along the way, because the question we often get asked is, look, well, where do I start? Like, I really don't know where I'm going. I'm at a bit of a crossroads, Karen. What do I do? And this is where we come back to this structure. And like, I know accountants like process and structures typically, so this should work for you in terms of following those particular steps. So if we start with knowing yourself, and again, like a little quote there from Aristotle, which where the quote goes like, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. So you really do need to take that time out to really understand what it is you want to get from your career, because ultimately it's your career. You're the person, as I said, who needs to be in the driving seat, but you also need to make sure that it's one that aligns with you personally as well, because you're much more likely to have success if it aligns with your values. So like some of the values that we would focus on in some of the sessions that Dave and I do with our members, like there's so many different ones, and there's lots of resources online in relation to the values, and you can do online tests around this, which some of them are actually very, very good and can help point you in the right direction in terms of what are the key, values that work for you, and what are the, things that are important to you. So for example, you'll see the one there in the second column, greater good. So, if that's a really important value for you, working within an organization that does have an emphasis on the greater good, it could be something, say, within the charity or not-for-profit sector, or it could be something, within, the sustainability sector, for example. So if that's high on your list of values, then that's something you really need to keep in mind. The other one that often comes up actually as part of our conversations will be around, balance and flexibility, and particularly at the moment with the whole move back to the office, that is something that's really high on the list of priorities for quite a number of people in terms of the flexibility and in terms of work-life balance, whether you're working remotely or hybrid. So if that's a value that's important to you, then that's something you need to be building into, your career plan and your objectives. So hopefully you can see where I'm going with this, that it's really just important to take that time out to understand your values and to build those then into your career goals and career objectives. Similarly, then you need to have a think about, well, look, what is it that motivates you? And again, this can be different things for different people. So for some, it might be safety and security. So, knowing that your role is secure, that the company is stable. If that's something that's important to you, you do need to take that into account. So for example, a permanent job is probably something you're more likely to look at than maybe, say, going from contract to contract. The other one, just you notice it there in the orange, is achievement. So if you're somebody who likes that sense of achievement, then you need to look at the type of role that will give you that. So maybe something, in the area of projects where things are moving quickly and there's that sense of achievement each time you finish a project, that might work for you, whereas for others that might not suit. So it's really just looking at those motivators and understanding, and highlighting what it is that works for you specifically. I really like this diagram, and I'm sure you've all heard of that expression: if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And it is really important that you get a good sense of what is that dream job for you. So it's basically that sweet spot in the middle there between the stuff that you love to do, the things that you're good at, and then, obviously, what is it that you're going to get paid for? Because ultimately we all have our bills and our mortgage, etc., to pay for. So it is important that obviously, you're going to earn a living out of this. So to kind of put this in a bit of context, and where we've seen this come together for members, is like one situation that comes to mind is a member who really liked working in the whole charity, not-for-profit sector, and they're really passionate about that. And we talked about the greater good earlier, so that was something that really motivated them. They were really very good at that whole financial management, financial control, I suppose, role, and they really enjoyed that in terms of having full oversight of the day-to-day elements of the finance function. So essentially now they have ended up working in a finance manager stroke controller role with a medium medium-sized charity. So that's where their sweet spot has landed them essentially. So it's a great way of I suppose showing you how that can come together. Similarly, like we've had situations where members have expressed a real interest in IT, for example, and have had some projects or some implementation experience, and they've been good at it, they've enjoyed it, and as a consequence they've moved more into that kind of IT consulting type roles, and that has worked really well for them. So again, it's combining their personal interests with what they're good at and where there are good opportunities at the moment as well. So that gives you a sense of how that can really happen for you, because sometimes it can feel like, oh yeah, my dream job, sure, that's not out there. But actually, when you use this tool, it can make it really come to life for you on a day-to-day basis. So really, when you're starting out on the journey of making sure that you're on the right track, you do really need to be very clear on what works for you. So you need to think about the type of job that you want to be working in. So kind of what type of role do you want? Is it one where you're involved in, say, the month-end financial reporting, or is it something more where you might prefer something in that financial analysis space, for example? You also need to think about kind of the level of responsibility that you want at this point, and whether that's something you'd like to see evolve over time. We've also talked about I suppose work-life balance, etc. So again, thinking about things like the hours that you'd like to work. Some people are quite happy to put in the I suppose kind of work the extra hours. Others are happy to do it sometimes but don't want to be doing it consistently. So it's really just seeing where you are in that continuum. And then things like I suppose kind of reporting lines, levels of responsibility, as we've said. So there's a whole myriad of things there that you really need to just think about and what they are for you, and just I suppose kind of plot those out. But obviously as well, you just need to be in the current environment anyway, and going forward, it's just having that flexibility and agility as well, because you do want to make sure that you get the opportunity to take advantage of any opportunities that come your way, obviously, as well. So it's really just, again, getting that clarity. So again, this tool can be really useful to help you to kind of understand and to decipher what success looks like for you. So this is what's called the wheel of life, but I often adapt it, to kind of, I suppose, reflect the career wheel, as I would often, I suppose, think of it. And it's really then just kind of plotting out or thinking about the top 8 things that are really important to you in terms of, success, because success looks I suppose different to different people. So it's really getting a sense of what that success looks like for you, and allocating a box to each of those areas, and then looking at it and kind of say, well, look, if the outer rim of the circle is a 10 and everything is going swimmingly, where are you in relation to, let's say, work-life balance? So you might be a 5 or a 6 in relation to that. So you'd mark that on the line on the way out, and then you would have a think about, well, how might I improve that? And what can I do in that space? Or, for example, continuous learning, you might have done some additional training, but might like to do more. So it's a case of, okay, I'm a 5 out of 10 there, but what do I need to get to be at a 10? And you might have spotted a course that you might like, for example, that you think, well, actually, if I did that, that will satisfy, and would represent success for me if I was to undertake that course. So again, this will help you. And I know for some of us, myself included, we like to kind of write things down or see things plotted out. So again, just to see a visual representation of it can really help, and to just kind of clarify your thoughts, and even then to talk it through with family, friends, a partner, and just to hear yourself actually even talking it through can really help in terms of getting that clarity. So just to keep that in mind. So the other key thing when you're planning your career is to think about what your key strengths are. And we all have our own natural, I suppose, innate skills and strengths that, again, in terms of moving your career forward, if you play to those strengths and those natural capabilities, you're much more likely to, enjoy the work that you do, and also as well, to do well, shall we say. And all of the, I suppose, research would speak to that. So it's really knowing what those key strengths are and looking for roles and opportunities where you can use those specific strengths and skills. And sometimes we're more aware of those than others. And I've even spoken to very senior members who would struggle in terms of putting their CV together, and they'd say to me, Karen, look, I'm really not sure, what my strengths and competencies are. Can you help me really uncover those and to decipher what they are? So this tool that we have here will help. So if you look on the left hand side, we have accomplishments, and from that, off that, then we have skills. So essentially what you need to do here is to ask yourself what your achievements have been. So, and then to take a particular achievement and think about it and say, right, okay, so to have achieved what I've achieved, what are the skills that I demonstrated? So, for example, if you take one that would be relevant to everybody on the call here today or on the webinar is, qualifying as a chartered accountant. So what skills did you need to demonstrate or possess to actually become a chartered accountant? So there's obviously the resilience, determination, numeric skills, and a whole range of other skills. So very quickly you start to see, look, there's a range of skills that I actually know I have because I actually have demonstrated those. So again, you could take another accomplishment, which could be you've been promoted to manager level within the firm. So again, you'd say, well, what skills do I need to demonstrate? So by the time you've done this 3 or 4 times, you will see that there's a trend there highlighting some of the key skills and competencies that you have, and that'll help you to increase your awareness around what those are, identify them, and then look at ways in which you can play to those strengths and use them more within either your existing role, or you would look for opportunities career-wise moving forward to see how you could use those to greater effect in your career. And it's going to be a lot more rewarding too if you're using those innate natural skills that we all have. So Paul mentioned earlier that, I suppose now is a good time, to be looking at and thinking about your career. And I suppose January, February time typically is a time of reflection for us all as we set our objectives, both on a personal level and for many as well. It's a time of performance management and appraisal, within your professional lives as well. So this can be a really good opportunity, to put some time into thinking about and reflecting on what I suppose on 2021. I know it was a challenging year in lots of different ways and very different to others, but by the same token, like I suppose everybody faced challenges, but they can be, a learning opportunity as well. So some of the questions I would ask you maybe to think about in terms of last year is, what went well for you? And really to, I suppose, pat yourself on the back to kind of say, yeah, look, I did a great job there. That went really well. So, what can I do now to kind of maximize that? How can I get more of those, achievements or more of that going in my career? What are you proud of? And we're often, especially in a busy world, we move on very quickly to the next thing, and we don't take enough time to kind of pat ourselves on the back to kind of say, well, look, do you know what, Karen, or do you know what, Paul, I did a great job. So it really is about, taking that time out to kind of recognize those achievements, because they can really bolster and boost your confidence to drive you forward. So then as well, looking at, and this is in line with what I was talking about in terms of identifying your skills, what skills did you showcase and develop? How did you deal with challenges during the year? So what were those challenges? What did you learn about yourself? What skills did you develop as a result of dealing with those challenges? And I know certainly, if I look back on some of the challenges that I've had to deal with over the last 2 years, there's definitely some skills in there that I can think of, in terms of having developed those. And, I suppose we've all been thrown into difficult situations over the last 2 years. What areas and skills need improvement? So again, look, there's always room for improvement. So it's really being honest with yourself to kind of say, well, look, what are those areas? What were the key learnings from economy. We've touched on that already. And then it's basically thinking about, well, look, you know, what do I want to get from the year ahead? And again, then incorporating that into your career plan. So we mentioned then that step 2 was exploring your options. And this can be really exciting because there's so much opportunity out there. Rachel mentioned that she's out the door with new inquiries from employers looking to recruit. We're seeing that ourselves as well. We're also seeing that lots of members are being promoted and taking on new opportunities. So there never has really been a better time than now to look at new options, either within your own organization or externally. So it's about having those conversations internally with your boss, to look, to research the market, see, you know, what are the new and emerging areas. And one of those that we're seeing actually is sustainability, for example. I've spoken to quite a number of members that have moved either exclusively into that area or where there's a sustainability element to their role. I was speaking to a member yesterday. I think she's about 2 years PQE, and she's working in one of the top 10 firms, and her role, she's just started in a sustainability role with one of the financial services organizations on a consultancy basis. So, you know, it just shows you that there are new opportunities coming up all of the time. Obviously, with you know, the world starting to open up again now following the pandemic, there are good opportunities internationally. So that's definitely something to look at. So it's really about, you know, speaking to as many people as you can to get a really good sense of what's out there in the market. Another way to do this and to open up your I suppose your mind to new opportunities is to look at LinkedIn profiles. And it could be really interesting just to see, you know, either your peers or more senior chartered accountants, to see what career paths they followed, you know, what moves did they make, you know, what are the areas that they have worked in, what other additional courses have they taken on. And it's a really interesting exercise to do, just to kind of flick through those profiles on LinkedIn. Similarly, then it's a good opportunity now to look at your network and see, you know, how is that network? Is it strong enough for you? Will it support you if you needed to tap into it? And last but not least, then the other suggestion around this is to engage with a mentor. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our mentor program here now within the Institute, which it's been going quite a number of years. And we find that members are constantly engaging with the panel of 150 mentors that we have. And we always receive really good feedback from the support that they get from the mentors. So what they find typically is that, you know, having a mentor can be really very motivational, that they're there to kind of spur you on, shall we say, and they motivate you to really achieve more. And they put that little bit of extra pressure on you as well, because they want to see you do well. There's an expectation there, I suppose. There's a bit of accountability as well. So if you're meeting up with them every let's say 3 or 4 weeks, you know, they're expecting that something will have happened or that you will have moved further along in terms of your thought process. So there is that little bit of kind of pressure there, and they're going to be there, you know, supporting you along the way. And the great thing is that, you know, they can often give you constructive feedback as well. So there might be some blind spots that you mightn't see yourself, or, you know, based on their own experiences and the pitfalls that they fell into, that they can, you know, kind of steer you clear of those and give you that feedback that will help. And ultimately, what we find of the mentors, certainly on our panel, is that they genuinely care about other members. And, you know, I suppose because they've done well typically in their own careers, they want to give something back to the profession. And that is the overriding reason I find that our members want to volunteer and act as a mentor, is because they genuinely care about the profession and want to give something back, and they want to see others, you know, do as well as they have themselves, and to support members as they go through their career journey. So if you're interested in that, you can just contact myself or Dave, and the easiest email address, actually, and I should have put it on the slide, is just careers@charteredaccountants.ie. And I thought it'd be useful just, I suppose, to put mentoring in context, just to give you some examples of some mentor relationships that we all know what happened as a consequence. So we have Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. We've got Steve Jobs and Mike Zuckerberg, just to name but a few. We've got Maya Angelou and Oprah, and then Christian Dior and Yves Saint Laurent for those people who like their fashion. So you can see that like mentoring is really very powerful, and it is a really valuable I suppose opportunity to be able to leverage the experiences, the insights and the learnings of other chartered accountants who are just that bit further down the journey that you're currently on in the context of your career. So just to keep that one in mind. So now when it comes to making decisions, that can obviously be a difficult I suppose task, shall we say, but what can really help is putting together a career plan. So really what does a career plan do for you? So essentially it gives you, I suppose, firstly to give yourself the time to draft it and just to set aside, an hour or two every so often just to kind of look at this and start drafting it and building on it, because it allows you to set out and chart your goals, and it really gives you that sense of direction. We looked at that map earlier, so this is going to be like your career compass, so your career GPS, that it gives you that clarity in terms of where you're going, and it will also help in terms of your confidence and give you that confidence to move forward. And when you have that confidence, you're much more likely to achieve success and to get that sense of achievement as you go along. And as I mentioned earlier, like it does help in terms of equipping you with the skills and I suppose the strength and resilience to deal with any setbacks and challenges that come along the way. And the other key thing about a career plan is that it acts as, I suppose, that, as I said, the guidance and the GPS and that template, so that if opportunities come along and you're really not sure, look, is this right for me or not, you can sense check it against your actual plan and see, look, is this in line? Is it going to take me in the right direction or not? So rather than being pulled off in the wrong direction, this will help to keep you on the right road. And it just really helps to break it down into steps, because I can totally understand, and this is something we would hear from young professionals all of the time, is that it can be quite overwhelming to decide on your next move. So what we're trying to do here is just to give you the skills and the tools to take that I suppose that kind of stress and anxiety out of it, because it can be quite overwhelming that all of a sudden, gosh, I'm qualified, what do I do next? And we do totally appreciate that can sometimes be quite difficult, and there's a fear there in terms of making a wrong move or a wrong step. I suppose the two things I would say to you there is, number one, you can always get back on track again, and number two, Dave and myself are there at any point to support you and to help you get things back on track if that does happen. But the beauty of the career plan is that it will help to keep you on track. So I'm sure you're all familiar with, the process of setting goals. So I won't, dwell on this for too long at all. But it is really just, keeping those principles of, SMART goals, just being realistic, I think, is the big thing here, and also making sure that the goals that you're setting yourself are motivational, that you're looking at them and you're getting excited. You're not looking at them and going, oh God, that they are something that really is floating your boat. You're getting excited and you're thinking, yeah, look, I'm going to go for this. So they're the real, I suppose that's the real measure, I suppose, of whether you're setting the right goals for yourself or not. So if we look at an agile career plan, the best way to do this is to break it down. And this makes it a lot easier, I suppose, to kind of get your head around as well, to be honest, because for the vast majority of us, we don't really have a very clear picture of where we want to be in 5 years' time. Some do, but in my experience, the vast majority, certainly at an early stage of their career, probably don't. And that's okay, because what you're going to focus on in the initial stages is that kind of short-term plan, the medium-term plan, and you will find then that over time that like the long-term objectives will become a lot clearer. So even if you were at this point kind of focused in on the short term, which is in the next 1 to 3 years, I think that will serve you well, and then you can build on that. And that's the whole thing about this being agile as well. And you know, I suppose that the world is changing at such a fast pace that we all need to be agile. Your career plan isn't going to be cast in stone. You do need to revisit it and check it on a regular basis. And it is okay for that to change course as you go along. Once you're in control of it, that's the key thing, that, you know, I suppose you're not off track with the career plan because you're being pushed down a particular area, or you're finding you're going a particular route that you're not comfortable with. But like, you know, it is natural that it will change and evolve over time. But the key thing is that you're controlling that as you go through your career. So to put an actual structure on it, then there are 4 key things that you need to look at. So the first thing is your goals. So what are your goals? You know, so again, you're looking at this structure for your short term, your medium, and your long term. So you're setting short-term goals, you're setting medium-term goals, and you're setting long-term goals. So it's kind of a case of, well, what do I want to do by the end of that particular period? So you might say, well, look, within the 1 to 3 years of like from now to the end of 3 years, I want to do X, Y, and Z. So that's what you need to think about in terms of, well, what is it I want to achieve in that time frame? You then need to look at, well, what are the actions required? So what do I need to do to achieve those goals? So one might be, you know, so if you say, look, I want to get promoted within the next, you know, year, shall we say, then you would say, right, okay, so what do I need to do there? So there would be a number of steps that you might need to take. One might be, you know, to let your boss know that you're interested in being promoted. Number 2 might be that you get involved in some projects within the organization to raise your profile within the organization. So it's really that very action orientated process. The next thing then is to look at, you know, kind of the tools and support. Like, so what help and support do I require? Because like you can't always do these things on your own, and you should always look for support and help where you can. So this is then where you would say, well, okay, can I get support from my current employer? You know, can I speak to my current boss? What support can they give me in terms of making that next move? Is a mentor or a coach going to help? So to think about that and who those individuals might be. And lastly, then it's that result and the I suppose kind of the outcome that you're looking at, and you're kind of saying to yourself, what is the measure of my success? How will I know that I've achieved what I set out to achieve? And the more kind of measurable and more tangible you can make this, the better, and the more you can actually visualize it. So if you can see yourself having been promoted, like, what does that mean for you? You know, so does it mean you know, a salary increase? Does it mean that you're going to be managing a larger team? Does it mean a different reporting line? So it's really looking at that and saying, like, what are the actual benefits and the measure of my success? So if you step down through each of those 4 steps for your short, medium, and long-term goals, that will very quickly develop into a career plan for you then. So it's just to kind of break it down step by step to take you through that process. So then just to recap then, so ideally a robust and agile career plan should be time bound, which we've talked about there in terms of your short, medium term and long term. It should be action orientated. So again, we've stepped down through the actions that you need to take. We've talked about the results focus and what is going to be the measure of your success. It needs to be adaptable. So as we said, like you know, I suppose things change. So you do need to revisit that and adapt it as things go on and keep it up to date. And, you know, like from a very overarching perspective, it needs to motivate you. You know, it needs to be something that you're really excited about, that is going to get you out of bed in the morning, and that you're going to think, yeah, look, I'm really motivated to go for this now, and I suppose spur you on to achieve the goals that you've set out to achieve. The other area that you need to think about then is your personal development goals. So it's looking at, you know, where your skills need to be improved and what you can do in that space. And this isn't at all by any means all about online courses. Absolutely, there's great opportunities in that space, but a lot of learning is very much on the job, particularly at the early stage of your career. You probably learn the most from the people around you. So it's really giving yourself that exposure to people around you. And that's where sometimes being back in the office can really help, because you learn so much by being around other people. So that's just something to kind of bear in mind, and to look and see where are there opportunities for you to learn. So for example, if you were getting involved in a project, that could actually help in terms of getting that extra skills or that extra learning, but always as well to make sure that whatever development you're undertaking, that it aligns with your career ambitions and your career plans. So that's where, when we were looking at tools as part of the career plan, this is what you need to be thinking about in terms of, well, are there specific courses that are going to help help me along that career trajectory. So just something to think about there. So I am now going to hand you over to my colleague, Dave Reardon. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen here now for a moment. Just bear with me. And I'm going to let Dave take control there now. And I will hand over to Dave, and he will take you through the next steps. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat, and I'd be more than happy to take those questions when Dave has finished his piece. And obviously, as Paul said, we do have a panel discussion then as well. So happy to take your questions there. Dave, are you ready to take the reins there?
Perfect. Great.
Yeah, brilliant.
Great start.
Okay. Don't worry.
I learned loads from that. 13 years in recruitment, Karen, and I think I've learned loads from that this morning, so thanks. It reminds me actually of a partner in my training firm who, when I was qualifying, said to me, "I'm not sure if you're built as a chartered accountant, Dave." So hopefully I probably found my correct path in the end anyway. Okay, so moving forward can mean many different things to different people, I suppose. It can mean adding a new skill set, or moving from working with financial services clients, for example, into industry, or getting into a sector that you're really passionate about. It should be noted also that not everyone wants to climb the ladder, so ambitions can be different for different people as well. Other things as well, like home ownership, marriage, children, can slow your march when it comes to building a career as well. So there's a lot of different factors. As Karen said, your career plan needs to be agile, can shift and change along the way. The grass isn't always greener on the other side, as Rachel said the other day, actually. And the reality is that you need to do your research constantly, I suppose. Then once you do that, you're much better equipped to build your career pathway for yourself on an ongoing basis. And mentioning the career pathway, there's a hub on Chartered Accountants Ireland's website, which is titled The Career Pathway, and it's well worth, as a young professional, having a look at that. Since joining the recruitment world, I was always amazed by the fact that people who have stellar careers are not necessarily the top 10 placed chartered accountants each year, but rather the ones who know how to read the market, are always discussing their career, looking for the next building block on their CV, and looking to get to know the right people. So if you go to the next slide. But what extra skills and responsibilities you can squeeze out of your current employer, for example, sometimes looking internally to your current employer can be a very strong option as well. Additionally, if you have an internal sponsor in your current company who has your back and wants you to succeed, that can be very powerful. Seeing that in practice, where a little bit different to a mentor, an internal sponsor is someone who you work really well with, like a manager or a director, who wants to see you get ahead, can see your talent and your skills, and kind of backs you along the way internally in the company, can be very powerful. So when building a career, most of the chartered accountants I speak to indicate that increased salary and extra money is not necessarily top of their list. It's usually about a third. It's usually about third on their list, I would say, about after getting into a good company or getting into the right sector. So just sometimes you can get a little bit fixated on salaries and uplifts in salaries, but often that's not the case. There's an article actually in the Chartered Accountants Accountancy Ireland publication this week, if you've seen it, about getting promoted. So why not look to get promoted in your current company? It's a great thing to be able to say when going for interview that you have been earmarked for advancement in your current company to move to the next level based on your strong performance. It's a real feather in your cap. Worth having a think, are there internal training courses in your current organization to avail of? For example, if you're in Big Four, I think Karen mentioned this already, that it's a way of getting additional skills and enhancing your experience and skill sets. Have you identified that you need more people leadership, for example? If so, perhaps this is an extra responsibility that your current employer can do for you. Can you move into another division like corporate finance, transaction services, for example? Can you gain additional systems or ERP experience in the finance division in the multinational that you're in, for example? These are all other options to look at. I sound like I'm probably putting you off moving out of your existing employer and looking at the market, but often it can be worth seeing what your current employer can do for you. If you're innovative by nature, perhaps you can suggest and formulate new procedures and efficiencies for your finance division in your department, for example. Remember, all these opportunities will become feathers in your cap or small stories to sing your own praises about at interviews in the years ahead, so you can file them away accordingly. The key is to make sure that the experience you're gaining constitutes the right building blocks for your chosen path and your ultimate goal. So as Karen was alluding to, that medium or long-term goal, your 5 or 10 year plan. So the next slide, Karen, thanks. Getting involved in projects can help you pivot off in a slightly different direction with your career and give you visibility and profile in your organization. It will also give you the reputation as someone who wants to get involved and get things done. And it looks great as a value add on CV. You develop a whole new set of management skills. For example, you can gain exposure to new colleagues and senior management, and it gives your personal brand a major boost as well, which we'll look at. Next slide is lateral moves. And sometimes you have to walk before you can run. Lateral moves can also involve less pressure, and they reinforce your brand and consolidate your expertise in a particular sector. Karen and I see many members every quarter who, particularly in a buoyant market, take on new roles which have super salaries, great seniority and prestige, but can often work out to be a bit of a step too far too quickly for them. It's just being vigilant of that, because you might have to roll back on it in due course. In this context, sometimes a lateral move can be the clever option and can be I suppose it can be a way to scratch itchy feet, so to speak. You want the move, but you don't necessarily want to completely change up your level. You can flesh out your skill sets. You can gain exposure to new clients. You can get a broader understanding of your chosen area. So, for example, moving from a finance manager in a technology multinational to a finance manager in a pharma PLC could give you a whole new toolkit for the role pertinent to that new sector, rounding you out as a strong, experienced finance manager. It will also help you better understand the transferability of your skill sets. Next slide, Karen. So it feels like roll it there, Roisin. Okay, I put this slide in here just to show you, as a recently qualified or young professional, the wide variety of opportunities and different types of roles available to you post-qualification. Some of you may be in these roles already, but for others, it'll be nice to see the diversity of the different styles of opportunities available across the board. And like, it's one thing that really hit me when I qualified. I kind of took my head out of the books and I realized that I had to figure out a career, and I really didn't know the full extent of the different kind of paths I could go down. And there really is quite a wide array of different opportunities there. So in terms of branding and networking, they really go hand in hand. As a young professional, you do have a personal brand, whether you realize it or not, and now you have to guard it and you have to grow it. So key piece is to be visible in work, but also not just work, but with recruiters, be visible via LinkedIn, and be visible with your personal network. So those four. Raise your personal profile in your current job. This will become ammunition for interviews in the time ahead. Make sure you're recording and calling out all your key achievements. Ask the boss that reviews what you're doing well, and be able to articulate that. And above all, don't slip into a comfort zone and don't become invisible. The next slide, I think, is about learning how to showcase your outputs. And this is something I think that many chartered accountants need to learn and develop as a skill. Be able to talk through your success stories comprehensively. Always try and be positive and passionate when you're discussing your work as well, in terms of your energy level coming across, enthusiasm being infectious. And as I mentioned, learning how to sing your own praises, that will take a little bit of practice. Spend time deciding what you want your personal brand to be and what you want to be known for. So in terms of the next slide, yeah, your personal brand basically forms the foundation of your career. Over the last decade or so, I've always been amazed by chartered accountant members who have taken control of their personal brand and promoted it really well, and it really is the secret to advancement. Like this kind of an extreme example in a way, but I suppose we all know that your personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. So, for example, stepping out of the lift at work and the others left behind in the lift will whisper things about you. For example, see him, he's a technical genius, or she knows everyone in the whole company, or he's a real people leader, or she is a super communicator and presenter. And these auras or brandings that people attach to you can give you a real edge and might be your differentiator when it comes to your career steps. In terms of networking then, if we move on to that, as a chartered accountant, one of the most important and powerful things you can do at an early stage of your career is to build your personal network. And if you only take one message away today, it should be that a strong personal network is the spine of a successful career. And without one, your career build will be far more challenging. I've learned that since I came into the institute in the careers team, and it's eternally true. Like, look, we're in Ireland at the end of the day. It's about who you know, and the people I've seen advance their careers have done it through networking, to put it bluntly. When you reach FCA status in the years ahead, the likelihood that you make a move by leveraging your network is probably over about 90%. So start building it now, put in the groundwork. So how do I build and grow my network? If we pop on to the next one. Thanks, Karen. Stay in touch with ex-colleagues. Find an excuse to touch base with them or pick their brains on something on occasion. Like, connect, share, discuss, particularly in specific groups in LinkedIn, and we'll look at that in a minute. LinkedIn has a whole subsection of visibility and networking unto itself that you can leverage. And stay in contact with people who attend the same conferences and events as you. I've gone to plenty in the past, not as many over the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, I've even been known, I'm sure Rachel's probably guilty of this as well, like at events where there's a list of attendees, taking a snapshot and being fully aware of what your peer group are that are attending these events, and making a point of linking in with them and being visible to them. The power of referral is very important. And just to give a scenario, say, for example, someone standing on the side of a GA pitch and you're having a chat with someone, you know, and during the course of the conversation, say, oh, wow, if you're looking to get into the sustainability sector, you know, you should definitely speak to my brother-in-law who started his own company, and he hasn't had the time to advertise, but he's actually really looking for someone to look after finance now for him, since they've grown exponentially over the last few years. So that's like a hypothetical scenario, and that happens every day of the week in Ireland. So, you know, wear it on your sleeve and be constantly looking for referrals. That's the power of the network. I mentioned LinkedIn on the next slide, and some brief points that I would say about LinkedIn and networking. It really is essential nowadays. It's a very powerful tool. All of us in careers and recruitment live on it. Make it a habitual weekly practice. connecting with, for example, 10 people per week. Be polite. Use a polite connection message. Of an example there of, "Hi Bob, I'm a member at Chartered Accountants Ireland like yourself, delighted to connect, kind regards Dave." 9 times out of 10 or 99% of the time they'll connect with you, and it expands your circle of influence. Is probably the wrong term, but your visibility and certainly your profile will be raised. Write recommendations for people, get into key groups of interest to you and interact, pick brains, say hi, post messages, just get interactive generally. Endorse people's skill sets, introduce other people to each other. Like if you do that, then they may refer you to a key contact of theirs someday by return. That's the altruistic nature of LinkedIn, really, I guess. Ultimately, the key is to embrace LinkedIn and to harness its usefulness. When I'm speaking to candidates or members of the Institute, I always tell them that LinkedIn is really your business card nowadays. It's also the appendix to your CV. It's the first thing that employers or anyone will go and look at once they have your CV in hand. And it's a very powerful online networking tool. So that's LinkedIn. Next is virtual networking, which is a little different. It's the new way of interacting, of course, and so look for online events through the Institute or other organizations where you can interact with your peer groups. I know in the past, for example, I've gone to the Internal Auditors Conference, which was in Meath, but is likely online nowadays. Chamber of Commerce events, back online as well. And just to give it a quick mention, I think there's a Young Professionals Coffee Roulette this Thursday as well, if you want to put that on your radar. Highly recommended, and a really nice informal chat way of connecting with members, etc. So onto the CV, and just a very quick, I know I'm probably preaching to the converted when it comes to CVs, but just a quick revision of the CV, and I'm going to pick out some of the more salient points on it. Your CV really is your sales document. It gets you in the door. That's the purpose that it serves. Know it inside out. Be able to talk your way through it clearly. Don't arrive in at an interview not really having looked at your CV and not being able to articulate the steps through it. Why not have a few different versions of your CV with differing flavors? Also, even maybe a one-page resume, a punchy resume that you can forward to someone informally with your LinkedIn profile as a different informal approach that can be used sometimes. It should share out the value add that you're bringing to a new employer as well. So not just listing your duties and responsibilities, I guess, is the key with that point. It needs to show where you added value. This slide is basically just a quick template. I mean, if you need anything in terms of guidance on your CV or review of your CV or anything like that, just pop it on to us. Typical CV will be 2 pages or thereabouts, but it really depends on the person. So always happy to review them at any stage. One of the things we're always asked, myself and Karen, is whether you should name clients on your CV. So if you're coming from practice, for example, and you work with particular clients, SME or PLC or financial services or whatever, whether you should name them on your CV. What I tend to say is that if they're PLC clients, there's no harm in putting them on there and naming them. And often it can actually look good in terms of the branding of your CV. Alternatively, another way of doing that is just to describe the sector and the size of the organization that you worked on. Make sure you detail all of your key achievements and sell your skill sets. Review your own CV critically as if you're the employer, so step into the employer's shoes and analyze your CV from that perspective. And I remember a director in one of the agencies I worked in years ago telling everybody that as you look through each line in your CV, ask yourself, so what after each line? What does it add? What does it mean? Or what am I bringing to the prospect of the new role I'm interviewing for? So on the next slide, I think we have, so there are other tips there that are kind of self-evident, but worth a reminder, I suppose. If you need any guidance, as mentioned, send your CV into the careers team and talk through. 2 small points though, I would make. your profile summary at the top of your CV, which a lot of people have, can be customized for applications, but it should be short, punchy, and speak to what you're seeking. So it might say Big Four trained chartered accountant with blah blah track record, etc., but aiming to develop my career in internal audit. If you're applying for an internal audit role, that can be a really good eye-catching piece to mention, or FP&A or whatever. Also, down at the other end of your CV, the other interests section, sometimes that gets left out, and it always amazes me when people leave that out, because the point of that piece of your CV is really for ice breaking and for a warm connection and discussion. Whether it's interests, sports, passions, hobbies, etc. It can warm up the interview with and the interaction with an interviewer, and give you something kind of separate to talk about, and it can indicate your personality and to say a little bit about you as a person as well. And ultimately, employers hire people as opposed to CVs. So the interview, and again, some basic points around the interview. It's my firm belief that every single interview needs a customized interview prep. I think Karen and Rachel would endorse that. I always do an interview prep with any candidate going forward for a role, for every single interview. Because every interview is different. No two are the same. Some are formal, some are informal, some are competency based, and some are CV based. I would tend to prepare for a competency-based interview, even if it means deciphering competencies for yourself from the spec and then building your specific story form answers. And actually pop back one slide, Karen, if you don't mind. Yeah, I knew there was a line in there that was really important. Employers hire humans, not robots. Ultimately, when it comes to the interview, it's like I mentioned there, it's very important to get your personality across, build a rapport. I mentioned about the warm connection. One thing I've learned down through the years is that your body language, your communication style, all these elements are really important. It's not always just about having the right technical answers. Anyway, sorry, just in case I missed that point, Karen, thanks. The competency-based element, I would always advise, if I didn't really know whether an interview was going to be competency-based or maybe CV walkthrough, I'd always try and err on the side of caution and prepare for a competency-based interview. And that means going into an interview with stories and examples that are well articulated and thought through. And that's really the nature of a competency-based interview. So you need to approach it from a perspective of having story form answers. And the best approach to that is to have them star-shaped, and giving good structure to each of those answers. And I think everyone knows what star-shaped answers are. We don't need to go into that. The advantage then, in terms of virtual interviews, which is kind of the predominant, particularly first round interviews at the moment, I think second rounds are becoming much more face-to-face actually as the year goes on now. The advantage of doing virtual interviews nowadays is that you can have your slippers on, you can have your notes beside you, fire on in the corner. You can even have a mug of coffee if that relaxes you. Some tips there in terms of the setup on virtual interviews. An awful lot of obvious stuff, but it's worth just noting if you're facing into them in the month ahead. Next slide then. One thing I always find is a common thread in interviews, particularly in the buoyant market, is that the interviewer will hire a person for their attitudes, their energy, their communication style, their commercial acumen and leadership style, above all other things. So it's not always about having the right technical answer to a question, as I mentioned, but sometimes it's simply about how you carry yourself in the interview and what your body language is like in the meeting. Your smile, your eye contact, etc. Essentially, the rapport that you build during the interview can be hugely influential and worth focusing on. just to have a look at the next slide, Karen. Yeah. An example is one member that I placed recently into the internal audit division of a PLC, where she did the interview and thought she did really badly because there was a couple of questions of a technical nature that she really didn't tackle particularly well. And so her feedback to me later in the afternoon was that it didn't go well. She performed pretty poorly, didn't know the answers to some of the technical stuff, and so probably write it off. And of course, then got an offer the following week, and it's starting. But the key message from that is that, particularly with internal audit, for example, where the emphasis and the competencies most important are about relationship building, communication style, analytical capabilities, and the ability to form relationships across a business and interact with senior management, so on. They could see it immediately in her that she was very strong on all of those fronts, and the technical piece can be built in at a later stage. Another thing to remember is that most interviews are a subtle two-way interaction, with you also judging the interviewer. Now, I'm not purporting that you go in and you interview the interviewer, but some interviewers aren't very good and not very experienced at interviewing, and you may need to allow for that a little bit. Equally, you might be judging subtly whether you want to work for this person and do you like them, which is an important element sometimes. If the role is one that you're really keen on, why not let them know towards the end of the interview that you're being really selective at the moment in what you're interviewing for, but that this is one of your favorite roles. Sometimes that can be a very powerful thing to say. That's it. And equally, if you've got a lot of activity on at that particular time, you've got a lot of interviews going on, let them know the time pressure around that, just for transparency. Sometimes it's good. So this just endorses what I was saying about what employers are actually really looking for when they meet candidates. As mentioned, they hire humans they like as opposed to robots, and that's why I always tell my candidates at the end of the interview prep to go and enjoy the interview. Yeah, I always say it's very annoying actually. Go and enjoy the interview. Enjoy singing your own praises for once, as you rarely get the opportunity. It's the one chance you do get to do that, and sometimes that takes a little bit of practice. Over to you, Karen. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. And that was really insightful. Thank you so much. So just to take you through some of the supports that we have that through the career service that Dave and myself look after. So we have the careers advice and support, as we mentioned, and one-to-one career coaching and career guidance. There is the CV and interview preparation service. We also have a recruitment service, but then also as well, if you're looking for advice around, salary, we can help you with that. And then there's a number of tools there that Dave has mentioned already. So our competency map, I've mentioned the career mentor program, and I think we have the details of the career mentor program have gone into the chat there for anybody that is interested. And then there's a library of career webinars as well on our website, a whole host of different topics there. And if you have any specific topics that you'd like to see us cover, just let us know. Always drop us a quick email, and if we haven't covered it off already, we'll certainly look to do that, whether it's in the shape of a webinar, podcast, or indeed an article. Do let us know if there's particular topics that you'd like us to cover off. So at this stage, I'm going to stop sharing the slides here now, and I think we are going to start the Q&A session, and I'll hand over to Paul now, if that's okay.
Great. Thanks a million, Karen, Dave, and Rachel, for all of that. That's really interesting insights, and we've got a few questions coming in. But Great. If anyone has any initial thoughts or questions, please just pop them in the Q&A box. It's kind of on the low side of your screen, and there's a ribbon and Q&A. So please just type them in there, and we can try to get through as many. One question we have here is around kind of market trends, and I know you guys are both active kind of in the broader market, but also speaking individually to people. I don't know, is there any kind of core topics, one or two topics that are kind of continuing to come up now, kind of post-COVID, in what you're seeing?
I'll take that because the two guys have been talking and I feel I haven't added anything. So thanks for mentioning my name throughout. And Dave, I never took any photographs of any lists of any events ever in my life. Maybe once or twice. So trends, I think Karen touched on the sustainability. That's definitely one. What I'm finding is a lot of candidates actually are saying, look, we've done our audit, I really want to get into a commercial role and I want to do some FP&A. And I do think the market is reacting to that. You know, they are trying to make, you know, not just standard financial accountant roles. A lot of my clients are looking for, you know, FP&A and maybe commercial accountant element to it. But if the candidate is going for those roles, then they need to know that they've got that skill set or that how they may have learned it before. But what I have tried to say to people, you know, depending on where you want to go ultimately, you still have to have the all-rounded experience, you know, be able to do month end. So there's a lot of roles out there that will incorporate a little bit of both. So back to the trends, I'd say FP&A, biggest trends in recruitment at the moment is that working from home, nobody seems to have figured it out for 100%. And the number one question candidates are asking before they even look at a job spec nearly is what's the work from home policy? It's not figured out. Sustainability is a massive topic where candidates want to, I suppose, work in a sustainability driven environment. Like I've got a client in the oil industry and often I get a lot of candidates going, just that doesn't sit with me at all, it doesn't sit with my values and stuff like that. So that's a big thing in the market at the moment. And I'd say the commercial route, a lot of people, candidates want to go through the commercial route. But I think, Dave, you mentioned, you know, jumping before you can run, maybe get in there, do a bit of the job, the financial accounting role first, and then get transferred over. Or before you go, wherever you are, try and get those skills or some exposure to it before you explore out into the market. At least you're going with something, some experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might just add to that as well, that like one of the things we're seeing is that you know, there's a big focus on recruitment and retention obviously within organizations, and one of the things we're seeing is that organizations are investing a lot more in their employees, so like in the shape of, say, you know, learning and development programs, and you know, running different programs internally, or you know, as part of discussions with their staff, checking to see, well, look, what areas are you interested in, how can we support you in this space, and also then looking at things like mentor programs within the organization, and also then kind of sitting down and saying, right, look, how can we support you to map out your career. So if you're in the lucky position to, you know, to have that offered to you, I'd be saying, look, grasp it with both hands, you know, because employers are really looking to do everything they can to retain people and obviously attract people. So the budgets in learning and development are definitely getting bigger, like, you know, and that's definitely we're seeing that for sure.
That's interesting, Karen, because sorry, Dave, did you want to add something there?
Just in case, it's worth a mention, Paul, because like we did talk about salaries, and you know, when people mention the market, often salaries is part of the conversation. And as we said, I suppose we'd all endorse that it's not top of the list when you're trying to build a career, but it is a factor. And there's been a bit of talk lately about salaries accelerating and packages becoming more inflated and so on. Like they are creeping up a little bit this year, but some of what you'd see publicized, you know, they're going mad. The sentiment, I think, from us here is that they're certainly going up a little bit, but not by double figures in terms of percentages.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. And yeah, it kind of feeds in, the next question feeds into kind of what you're all speaking about. And what are some of those kind of considerations from a candidate's perspective on making that, you know, stay internally and move into a different role, or to move externally and move into a different organization? Like what are some of the kind of key considerations someone should have when kind of making that decision?
Well, I'm just going to say, we do a survey every year, and the average time somebody is staying in a business tends to be between 3 and 5 years. So before anybody was to move to another company, I would say, have you got the most out and given the most to the client as well, or the company, but have you got every last bit of experience, because wherever you go, if you go externally, you're going to have to build up that trust again, build your reputation again. So you want to make sure you're leaving on a high. If you are leaving, sorry, that's number one. Two, you want to leave on a high if you are leaving as well, because the boomerang employee is coming back more and more. I think Karen and Dave probably are fully aware that that's, you know, a candidate might join a company for 3 years, maybe go traveling, do something else, and they might come back to that company. So you want to make sure you're leaving a good reputation behind you as well. And the consideration versus going outside versus staying in, you know, I'm just thinking there, like, everybody doing the hiring is, you know, maybe 5 or 10 years older than maybe the cohort we've got here. They have got a very different mindset. You know, they like the 9 to 5 in the office. I'm really generalizing here. So they like to see a stable or a solid CV. So if somebody's moving every year and a half, they're kind of going, oh God, so I'm going to hire this person, get them just about trained up, doing the job properly, and they're going to go again. So I really do think, you know, the longer you can stay in a role, and I'm saying 3 to 5 years, with the really solid set of achievements on your CV, and saying the reason for leaving is there is no internal promotion, and you really have explored that. And I often use, somebody might say to me, oh, there's no internal I left that role because there was no internal promotion, and they'll often come back to me, they'll say, and that finance director is still there. And you kind of go, oh, fair enough, you know, that there's nowhere for that person to move, but the finance director is still there 10 years later. So I would really maximize the role you're in and the opportunities you got internally, because everything else you're starting from, not scratch, but you're starting your personal branding again.
And I think it just on a like, I suppose, a related note, then, like, I suppose if you are, you know, considering a move, it's to look at, you know, the culture and the environment that you're going to be moving into is an important consideration. Obviously the role, yes, but, you know, the culture and the environment, and like what Rachel said there as well, making sure that that is kind of aligned with your values, that the sector is something that, you know, you're interested in, or that aligns. And critically then, you know, looking at the people that you're going to be working with, because what's really important for everybody on the webinar this afternoon is, you know, getting the right experience and support at this early stage of your career. So ideally you want somebody who is going to act as that mentor, who you're going to learn from, that you have a good relationship with, and they, you know, I suppose, are going to support you as you develop your career within that organization. So it's somebody that you can really work well with, that you can look up to and respect as well, and that you're going to learn from. I think that's critically important in any move at any stage in your career, but particularly at this early stage when you're trying to, as Rachel alluded to there, like, really bed in that, as much of that kind of the foundations of your career and that solid experience at this stage. And, you know, I did mention it earlier that a lot of, I suppose, the learning that you get at this point of your career is on the job training and working with good people and being surrounded by good people.
Great. No, thanks very much for those detailed responses, and then kind of feeding into kind of what types of jobs people are pursuing, or what types of jobs you're seeing available in the market. We've kind of got a number of questions here. One is kind of what accountant roles would be typical for recently qualified, and then, you know, what non-accountant roles would also be typical. So any sense you have of kind of opportunities there and what specifically that looks like might be helpful.
I always feel that there's like, so what's available for newly qualified accountants? So you've got the big multinationals. Again, these answers are really generalizing here, but you've got the big multinationals, and they tend to offer maybe something like a GL accountant, or maybe a financial analyst role. And you go in and you might be one of many people doing that, and you're doing part of the process. Or you might go into a smaller business where you see the end-to-end finance division, and you can see, you know, see what happens from AP to AR to whatever it might be during the month end. Or then you go into a PLC, and Dave, you alluded to it there, the internal audit role. And I laugh because whenever you mention to a recently qualified or newly qualified person, oh, there's a great role at the PLC and in internal audit, people just go, no way, I don't want to touch it. But I always say, if you look at the people who are now running those PLCs, you can guarantee almost without fail that each one of them left a practice and the first job they did was internal audit, because the only way to get to know the absolute ins and outs of a business is by spending 2 years. It's not the only way, sorry, again, total generalization. So there are your roles. You've got your big multinationals, you've got your SMEs, or you've got your PLCs, or another practice obviously as well. But each of those are very, very different. And I think each of them provide very different career paths. Would you say that's fair to say, Dave and Karen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. You go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, like, I mean, one thing that really struck me when I qualified, as I alluded to there, was the variety of different roles that are open to accountants. And I think that the original question there was about the non-accounting roles versus accounting roles. I'm typical of example of somebody who's not in an accounting role, probably for the better. But you know, there's so many different avenues you can go down. Well, like I was going to build it into my presentation, but there was a CASI member that I placed into a role a year and a bit ago, who decided that he loved systems. He wanted to go down a systems route or something to do with IT that might leverage his chartered accountancy. He ended up going into a large technology company in kind of the systems implementation space, just even for 12 months, just to see if he liked it, add to his skill set, flesh out that whole side of his experience. And sure, look, if it didn't work out, it'd be an easy one to back out of, and he'd still have picked up a few extra skills. And lo and behold, he loved it. He was able to build on both on other kind of skills and competencies, and he's grown up into a really senior role in that space very, very quickly. So like the profession, the qualification opens up so many different doors and so many different avenues that, like, it comes back to Karen's point maybe about doing your research, knowing what you like, and starting to really build it out from there, you know, and find your passion.
Great. No, that makes lots of sense. Another question we have around was the networking opportunities that you kind of mentioned and the importance of it. One is kind of, is there any generic kind of networking opportunities you would see or would advise, kind of, as you say, maybe going to a conference or something along those lines? And then the question then also was around what the Institute provides by way of kind of networking opportunities. I can take the second question to say, and just plug another event that's on later in this week, is the Coffee Roulette event on Thursday at lunchtime. So we definitely advise kind of attending that. That will be of kind of young professionals and other peers, and you'll get kind of placed into a room with various other peers that you can have discussions on. And also then I'd keep an eye open for various young professional events coming up. Hopefully COVID allowed, we'll be moving into in-person events at some stage later this year. So that'll be a good opportunity for any networking events, but open again to the floor there. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I might build.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, yeah, thank you. So just to build on what Paul was saying, so there's the various different district societies as well have events that I would definitely suggest attending. Obviously, in the last 2 years, they haven't been face-to-face and they've all been online, but we are now moving back to face-to-face. So from from next month, actually, the district society events are coming back on stream again. So anything in that space, obviously, then we have, like, you know, conferences, CPD courses can be great as well to meet people at. Outside of that, Dave mentioned, I think you mentioned, Dave, the Dublin Chamber, you know, those events can be really, really excellent as well. There are other, you know, professional networking, I suppose, organizations as well. One that I'm involved in myself would be the Professional Women's Network, and that can be really good if you want to meet others outside of the finance profession, which can be great too in terms of opening up your I suppose kind of boundaries as such, and looking at other areas. So anywhere where there's an opportunity to engage and meet with people in a meaningful way, and like obviously you want to have a bit of fun and be yourself as well. So, you know, even getting out like for to some of the dinners that are run by ourselves and other organizations, just to kind of keep those in mind as well. So Rachel, you were going to come in there as well.
I was just going to say that, I know a lot of companies, a lot of the practices, they take tables at dinners as well. And they are always looking for people to attend, and to be seen in a room with all of the, 1,000 other people, you get to meet all sorts.
You do.
And sometimes I go to these things and I go, oh, damn it, I was too tired, I don't want to go today. And then I go and I get a connection who then gives me a job or recommends a candidate. And I go, thank God I went. But I'm a member of, I'd say, nearly every network in town, I feel. But there's other ones that you can pay for, but they're not too expensive. There's the Institute with Directors, probably, but not appropriate. There's a China Ireland Chamber. There's a Canada Ireland Chamber. There's an Indian Ireland Chamber. And your businesses tend to be members of these anyway, but it's good to just get out, find out, who's around town, what are they doing. You've got your local enterprise networks. I think Enterprise Ireland do a couple of networks. I think most businesses, certainly on this call, are probably a member of the 30% club. And it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, they want people on board on that, so that, the future sees that equality and diversity. So I think you wouldn't have to look very far to get yourselves involved in networks beyond maybe your current, I suppose beyond your friends, really. And Dave, I think you were going to mention about networks on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think with the face-to-face stuff all coming back, I would have attended a lot of breakfast meetings and stuff like that yourself, whether it's to the Big Four or Twitter. We're always putting on kind of breakfast events with CEOs and CFOs and stuff like that. So I think we're going to see all that coming back. There's lots of, I'm trying to think if there's something specific on LinkedIn. I'm not sure in terms of networking. Just as a tool itself, LinkedIn is really powerful. We all live on it, but
I do. And there's lots of groups and stuff like that you can join. And meet your ex-colleagues if you've moved on. I think one of the practices, again, have an alumni group just to encourage that boomerang potential employability. I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah, I'm just conscious of time as well. We might kind of stop there, but again, I think to reiterate, there's plenty more where it's come from for the rest of the week, including the networking event we discussed on Thursday. So would just welcome everyone to kind of review the week's calendar and attend any more of the events that we've got on. I don't know if anyone else wanted to make any sort of closing remarks.
Well, your first part of your employer brand, your personal branding, Dave alluded to it, be visible on LinkedIn. So if you attended this event and you see, I think it's Peter Gillen tends to promote the events. Karen, you wrote something yesterday.
Yeah.
Paul Cassidy, you didn't. Did you like and share posts?
I think I liked and shared. I think I did like and share. Yeah.
So I think you should all, when you see that networking event, because it's really going to be, it's really going to be interesting, and it's a first step back into the real world, I think.
Exactly. It'll be a bit of fun as well,
so
ultimately.
Please do like and share it, and that's your first step into getting involved.
Absolutely. And listen, thanks to everybody for attending today, and Paul for chairing, and Dave obviously for your excellent presentation as well. So thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.
And Emma obviously for helping us as well with the organisation behind the scenes. So thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Thanks everybody.
Again, everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Take care. Bye.